This was LG's top-of-the-line ultrawide monitor back in 2020, the LG 34gp83a. Before all the fancy OLED monitors and extremely high refresh rates, at $750 back then, this was the best of the best. But now, these can easily be had for $400. Let's see how it measures up to today's standards and determine if it's worth still considering. This monitor possesses the trifecta of specifications with a high-end resolution of 3440 by 1440, a high refresh rate of 144 Hz, which is overclockable to 160 Hz, and a beautiful IPS panel. Often monitors will do one of these things very well and be fairly average in the other two, but this monitor hits the sweet spot for all three. The curve is a bit aggressive from what we've seen by LG and Samsung, coming in at 1900R, but I've noticed this is very comfortable once you lock in your adjustments. It's curved enough to improve gaming and workstation viewing angles, but not so much to affect critical photo and video editing. We are also getting NVIDIA's G-Sync, which matches the frame rate from your GPU to your monitor's refresh rate, so we don't get any screen tearing when gaming. For adjustments, we're pretty much getting the bare bone here with only height and tilt with no swivel or pivot. But if you're like me, going for a clean desk setup, I've used a monitor arm to clear up some desk real estate and to have more adjustment if needed. In terms of I/O, we're pretty much getting what you expect: a headphone jack, 2 USB Type-A ports with a USB pass-through, 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, and a DisplayPort 1.4 port. Just make sure to use the DisplayPort to take advantage of that total 160 Hz, since the HDMI only gets to 85 Hz. Alright, for more info on the panel, we are getting a 1 millisecond gray to gray response time, a contrast ratio of 1000 to 1, 10-bit color, 400 nits of brightness, an anti-coating, and 98% coverage of the DCI P3 color space in HDR 400. So, as you would have guessed, this monitor would be killer for video editing and gaming. But before you do any of that, here are some recommended settings to change to improve the color accuracy. Head over to rtings.com to read more about these settings, since I did just source them from there. Using the Picture Profile Gamer 1, we're going to set the contrast ratio to 68, RGB to 50, 52, 50, gamma to mode 2, and brightness to 17. But feel free to change the brightness as needed through normal use. So far so good until we take a look at the black uniformity, which, to put it simply, is mediocre. Backlight bleed is visible along the monitor's edges, and the screen is a bit cloudy with blacks and midtones. There's no local dimming feature to improve this performance further, and after being able to use a OLED display, the difference is plainly obvious. We are also not getting any built-in speakers, but honestly I recommend getting a pair of IEMs either way to add to that immersion. In terms of design and branding, I'm a huge fan of the minimal look of this monitor. No visible flashy red accents, with the only red being found on the back. The entire monitor has uniform bezels, with the chin only having a small LG logo. And man, this monitor, when I first used it, it was a game changer. The wide field of view in games and immersion this monitor gives is the next level. However, all that means nothing if you can't drive this monitor to its full potential. Ideally, you'll be pairing this monitor with something faster than an RTX 3080, but even the subpar $350 RTX 3070 can get you most of the way there. Now with that 160 Hz refresh rate and G-Sync, gaming is super smooth. This makes playing open world games such an immersive experience. Even though most game developers are adding compatibility, just make sure that the games you do plan on playing support it. For example, Elden Ring didn't support ultrawide by default, and when you first load into the game, there will be black bars to the side. However, there is a workaround with messing with the game's files, and it works perfectly fine. Just make sure to do your due diligence on this part. But most importantly, all those pixels and refresh rate isn't really worth nothing unless you can actually drive those high frame rates. I found having something performant above an RTX 3070 is the sweet spot for value. And if you're looking just for gaming, I can recommend the RX 6700 XT if you're on that tighter budget. I was able to get about 140 FPS on Rainbow Six Siege with high settings, and about 110 FPS on the finals with high settings with FSR2. The RTX 3070 was only slightly beating the RX 6700, And if you don't care about ray tracing, then it's not a bad overall choice. I personally was able to use the RTX 3080, 3070, and 4090 during my time with this monitor. And yeah, if you're willing to lower the settings a bit, I can say the RTX 3070 is enough to drive this monitor. But if you're trying to play more AAA titles and have more to put towards a better GPU, then the RTX 3080 is the better choice here. But with the 4090 though, the experience was just uncompromising. Clarity, detail, and smoothness was all there. It was my first truly deeply immersed gaming experience I had in a while. This combo is literally perfect for maxing out textures and having enough resolution to make things look crisp and pleasant to look at. So there it is. For those that mainly play open world games, you would truly appreciate that extra horizontal space. And sure, when you're comparing with an OLED, you're not getting those perfect colors with those perfect midtones and deep blacks and sub 1 millisecond response time, but you will be saving a lot more money since you can get this monitor for under $400 right now on Amazon Warehouse. And since OLED and cheap are words that really don't go well together, I will steer clear from OLEDs if you're more budget focused, of course. And to be honest, to get about 90% of the experience for half the cost of an OLED, I say this monitor is still a sensible choice to this day.